testimony had no violence and no aggression and no anything. It was really like a surprise to me to the fact that I was even called to testify.
From the outside, Diddy's world looked polished and untouchable, but that illusion shattered when Sharay Hayes took the stand. Her testimony exposed a disturbing undercurrent, describing carefully planned encounters involving Cassie that hint at something much darker. And it doesn't stop there. Singer Dawn Richard added to the shock with her account of unsettling, aggressive behavior, painting a picture few could have imagined. Behind the luxury and fame, what was really going on in the shadows?
As the Punisher, the 51-year-old told us that based on his experience, he didn't know what alleged crime he was testifying about.
Sharay Hayes was a prosecution witness, though some believe he helped the defense. Our Anthony DiLorenzo joining us now. Anthony, you were inside the courtroom, and then right after you spoke to Mr. Hayes, who is relieved, he says, right, that all of this is over.
He certainly is. He told me that he never looked at Diddy, even in the eye, but was not intimidated at all by his presence on the stand, saying he was there just to tell the truth. But as someone who makes his living as a male dancer, wants people to know that he would never do anything to hurt a woman.
Sharay Hayes may not have been a household name before this case, but her courtroom appearance has changed that overnight. Once a regular presence in Diddy's social circle as a dancer, Hayes has now become a central figure in one of the most eye-opening moments of the trial. Her testimony offers a revealing look into a hidden world few ever imagined existed behind the scenes of a music empire. Hayes described being swept into a lifestyle where over-the-top events blurred the line between glamour and control. These weren't typical celebrity parties. According to Hayes, they were meticulously planned gatherings with unspoken rules and limited privacy. Her first-hand account emerged as one of the most detailed and troubling narratives presented to date, leaving the courtroom stunned. She alleged that Diddy wasn't just hosting these events, he was orchestrating them. Hayes claimed Cassie often played a central role at these functions, though not by choice. According to her, Cassie frequently appeared uncomfortable and withdrawn, yet was pressured into participating for the sake of appearances or others' entertainment. What stood out in Hayes' account was the level of control she said Diddy exercised. From deciding who was allowed into the room to setting expectations for how guests should behave, she painted a picture of power dynamics that went far beyond social norms. The atmosphere, she recalled, was both alluring and oppressive. Dimly lit spaces, loud music, and high-end liquor helped set the tone, but beneath the surface, the environment was carefully managed. Hayes' testimony described young women surrounded by influential men, with the balance of power always skewed. She said Diddy's presence set the tone, magnetic, yet intimidating. What made her statements especially powerful was how closely her descriptions aligned with earlier reports. Prosecutors were quick to point out that the locations she mentioned, private estates, luxury penthouses, and yachts, matched timelines and details from other sources. But the most haunting part of her testimony came when she detailed moments between Diddy and Cassie. Hayes claimed Cassie's hesitations were often ignored, replaced by subtle but firm pressure to comply. It wasn't always verbal, she explained, but the message was clear. Refusal wasn't really an option. And just when it seemed the revelations couldn't go any further, the courtroom was hit with another wave. Dawn Richard, former Donady Kane member and close collaborator with Diddy, stepped forward. While Hayes spoke of secrecy and control, Richard's focus shifted to something even more serious: allegations of physical violence that reached beyond the parties and into personal relationships.
Hoping that I'm not viewed as somebody who did something to Cassie or contributed to her experience in a negative way.
Also on the stand Tuesday, Ventura's mother, Regina, who showed photos she took of her daughter's alleged physical abuse, and an email from Cassie fearing that Combs would release a sex tape or hurt her if she didn't pay him $20,000, a sum he later returned. Combs' former personal assistant, David James, also testified how he once accompanied Diddy to confront Suge Knight in California, armed with guns, admitting he later quit because he thought his life was in danger. So back to Mr. Hayes, the Punisher, says he stopped getting calls for freak-offs after failing to satisfy the demands of the job he was paid thousands for, something that he's actually written about in his men's health book without naming names. So it was jam-packed today at court.
Yeah, wow. Anthony, it was really like a wide-ranging and fascinating interview. I'm curious, after he spoke with him, did he weigh in on Diddy's guilt or innocence?
So at this point, he says that he really has not read much about what this case is about, hasn't read up on any of the testimony so far, the facts of this case. He doesn't even have a full picture.
At first glance, Cassie's rise in the music industry looked like a dream come true. A young, talented artist working closely with one of the biggest names in the business, Diddy. Their relationship, both professional and personal, was seen by many as a powerful partnership. But recent testimony has painted a very different picture, one far removed from the spotlight. According to Sharay Hayes, what unfolded behind closed doors was troubling. Her account described Cassie not as a willing participant in glamorous events, but as someone caught in a carefully controlled environment. Hayes claimed that Diddy orchestrated these gatherings with precision, and Cassie's role was never optional, it was expected. Rather than spontaneous parties, Hayes said these were structured experiences where each person had a role, with Cassie consistently placed at the center. Her discomfort, according to Hayes, was visible, her posture rigid, her expressions uneasy. It wasn't freedom on display, but fear. Hayes went on to describe how these private events took place at exclusive locations where only selected individuals were allowed in. While the setting may have seemed luxurious, she claimed the reality was far more complex. For Cassie, there was no room to say no. When she reportedly hesitated or tried to step away, Hayes said Diddy would step in, firmly reminding her that resistance wasn't welcome. What's most unsettling is how Hayes' account reflects a larger pattern that experts have identified in the entertainment industry. The imbalance of power between mentors and younger artists can lead to situations where consent is murky and autonomy is stripped away. In Cassie's case, the influence Diddy held over both her career and personal life appeared to blur those lines completely. Hayes made it clear this wasn't just about uncomfortable moments at parties. It was about control, pressure, and a deep personal toll. Prosecutors suggested that additional witnesses may come forward to support Hayes' claims, possibly revealing even more about what Cassie may have endured. For now, Cassie's story, as told through Hayes' testimony, serves as a powerful example of how influence can be misused. It raises serious questions about power, consent, and emotional control within celebrity relationships. But this wasn't the final shock in the courtroom. Just as the room began to process Hayes' allegations, Dawn Richard took the stand. And her testimony took things in an even more serious direction, shifting the focus from manipulation to allegations of violence. What followed added a new and chilling layer to the case still unfolding around Diddy's private world.
Testimony had no violence and no aggression and no anything. It was really like a surprise to me, to the fact that I was even called to testify.
Hours after leaving the witness stand, an escort named the Punisher spoke to Pix 11 about his surreal experience on the stand in the Sean Combs trial.
Was it intimidating sitting in front of him telling the story?
It was not, because the story is honestly what happened.
His real name? Sharay Hayes. The 51-year-old has been working in the adult entertainment industry for 30 years and recalls taking a phone call from Cassie Ventura in 2012.
Cassie is the one who always handed you the money?
Yes.
And she's the one who always set this up, except for that one weird text that you got?
Exactly.
This was his first foray as an escort, but says he would never participate in the so-called freak-offs had he thought Cassie was being coerced.
I literally can't say that any part of my experience gave me any cues that this was a woman in distress. More of a fetish type of scenario.
He says Diddy was directing the two, but never aggressively. Now that he knows about the sex trafficking allegations, regrets his participation.
Dawn Richard was once seen as one of Diddy's rising stars. As a member of the girl group Donity Kane, she rose to fame under his guidance during the height of his influence in the early 2000s. But what she shared in court this week stunned observers and delivered a serious blow to Diddy's already mounting legal troubles. Unlike previous witnesses who focused on manipulation and control, Dawn's testimony took a darker turn. She spoke of regular outbursts of anger and physical intimidation, behavior that she says created a toxic, fear-driven environment. According to Dawn, Diddy's temper wasn't just a private issue. It impacted everyone in his orbit. In one chilling account, she described a moment during a studio session where Diddy erupted in rage over a disagreement. "It didn't matter who was around. When he got angry, you felt it," she told the court. But the most disturbing memory she shared involved a personal altercation. Dawn said she once saw Diddy grab Cassie's arm so forcefully during an argument that Cassie visibly winced. The room fell into a stunned silence. No one dared step in. Dawn's words struck a deep chord. For years, whispers about Diddy's volatility have swirled in the background of his career. But until now, many of those rumors remained unverified. Hearing such testimony from someone so close to him, a former mentee and collaborator, made those concerns suddenly tangible. Her description of walking on eggshells around Diddy painted a picture of life dominated by mood swings and tension. What sets Dawn's testimony apart is its scope. It wasn't just about how Diddy allegedly treated one person. It was about an entire ecosystem shaped by fear. Her account reinforced the idea that his influence extended far beyond business decisions, affecting the mental and emotional well-being of those around him. When combined with the explosive testimony of Sharay Hayes, a former dancer in Diddy's circle, a clearer and more troubling picture begins to form. Hayes described lavish events involving Cassie that she alleged were not only orchestrated by Diddy, but often non-consensual. According to her, Cassie's participation wasn't voluntary, it was expected. Hayes testified that these encounters happened in luxury settings but carried a disturbing undertone of pressure, control, and emotional coercion. Both women's accounts have intensified the spotlight on Diddy's personal conduct. Prosecutors are now zeroing in on claims of not just manipulation, but possible criminal behavior, including coercion and abuse. Hayes' vivid details, combined with Dawn's account of violence and fear, have already reshaped the public narrative. And the fallout is growing. Diddy's legal team is scrambling, not just to defend him in court, but also to manage a rapidly collapsing public image. The media has latched onto each new revelation, with headlines echoing the courtroom's most harrowing moments. From Hayes describing Cassie's visible discomfort to Dawn recalling that silent, frozen room, every detail is now part of a larger cultural reckoning. Legal experts are drawing parallels to the downfall of other powerful men in entertainment, Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, whose legacies crumbled under the weight of consistent, corroborated testimonies. And just like those cases, there's growing speculation that more witnesses could come forward. For Diddy, the stakes couldn't be higher. What began as private allegations is now a full-blown legal and public crisis. And while the final legal outcome remains uncertain, one thing is clear: his carefully crafted legacy has taken a massive hit. But this story goes beyond one man. It shines a spotlight on deeper patterns in the music and entertainment industry, of unchecked power, blurred boundaries, and the silent suffering of those stuck in the shadows. And based on how this trial is unfolding, we haven't heard the last of it.
Sure, and that he was a male exotic dancer, and I was like, oh, that kind of clicked. So he had walked in. He's a very tall man. He's well put together. He had an entire suit on with a tie. He's very built, and the first thing that the prosecution asked was just about the exhibit photos, those exhibit photos being just kind of a standard press photo, essentially, of Diddy and Cassie, and he confirmed that that's Cassie Ventura, and that's Sean Combs, a.k.a. Diddy. And so he said in the fall of 2012, he was paid to create a sexy, erotic scene for a woman who had called him. He said that he met the two while he was working at a club event, but it was a woman who had called him saying that she wanted kind of a present by her husband around her birthday time, and that her husband said it was okay if she were to hire a dancer. So the Punisher initially thought that he was going to be doing kind of a dance for women at a bachelorette party, but when somebody opened the door It was, lo and behold, Cassie Ventura. He had said that she was wearing a bathrobe and she was a wig, and initially didn't even recognize her at first. But this was this first meetup that they had, again, expecting a crowd during this, but really it was just Cassie in the room. Again, not knowing it was Cassie at the time. And then he was told that her husband wanted her to put baby oil on each other and create this kind of fantasy, this erotic scene.
The testimonies of Sharay Hayes and Don Richard have revealed more than isolated incidents. They've unearthed a pattern of control, coercion, and violence, threading through years of alleged abuse. What's emerging is not a tale of poor judgment or fleeting misconduct. It's the image of a man who, over time, allegedly built a world where power wasn't just practiced, it was enforced. According to Hayes, Diddy's influence at private events stretched far beyond what guests saw on the surface. Women, particularly Cassie, were allegedly made to feel like compliance wasn't optional. There was no negotiation, only quiet expectation. And in those closed-door spaces, Diddy made the rules. Dawn Richards' testimony added a brutal air. She didn't just speak of emotional manipulation. She described a system maintained by intimidation, fear, and unpredictability. Together, these accounts don't sound like isolated tragedies. They describe a structure, a machine of control, allegedly engineered and fine-tuned over years. But these stories don't live in a vacuum. Experts in celebrity culture say what's being described fits a disturbingly familiar pattern. In Hollywood and the broader entertainment industry, status and charm are often the tools of dominance. The accused present themselves as mentors, gatekeepers, or protectors, all while tightening their grip behind the scenes. If the court testimony is to be believed, Diddy's alleged conduct wasn't an anomaly. It was textbook. He wasn't just giving opportunities. He was allegedly threatening to take them away if certain expectations weren't met. It's a tactic designed not just to gain loyalty, but to ensure silence. Hayes described young women being ushered into exclusive settings, places where participation felt less like choice and more like obligation. Richard, meanwhile, painted a picture of an environment shaped by emotional chaos, where fear determined every move. Whether it was Cassie enduring psychological pressure or Richard walking on eggshells, the threads of manipulation connect their stories with chilling clarity. These testimonies aren't just damaging for Diddy. They're a mirror held up to a wider problem, one the entertainment industry has often been unwilling to confront. Power, when unchecked, becomes dangerous. And when cloaked in celebrity, it becomes nearly invisible. But now, visibility is exactly what's happening. Every new testimony adds weight to the growing sense that Diddy's era of untouchability may be ending. And if someone with his level of influence can be pulled into the light, who's next? This case has already left a ripple effect far beyond one courtroom. Sharay Hayes' detailed accounts of coercion and Dawn Richards' emotional testimony of violence don't just tell us about one man, they expose a system. A system where control is mistaken for charisma and silence is too often bought with power. As Hayes put it plainly to the court, it wasn't about choice. It was about control.